So I'd like to start with the producer and the director, with Lynn and Sarah. Can you just talk about the genesis of the film and what it was like making it, the process?
Sarah and I have worked together, as I said, for many, many years on mostly historical films like the Vietnam War and Prohibition. And we had the chance to give a guest lecture at a BPI classroom in 2012 about our Prohibition film. And just going into the classroom and spending time with the students and showing clips from our film, we had the kind of conversations you've seen, just very serious, profound, rigorous, thoughtful, engaged. It was a great conversation about a film that we had been traveling the country speaking about. It was actually the most interesting conversation we had about that film of anywhere we went. And when we left, we looked at each other and said, this is extraordinary what's happening in these classrooms, what these students are doing. Someone should make a movie about that. It would be an amazing movie, but we're kind of busy right now with our Vietnam film. And the next year I actually had the opportunity to teach in the program myself, and Sarah and I taught together some of the classes and got to understand the program better and get to know some of the students. And over the next year or so, we started talking with Max about maybe we should make the film after all. And that's how we got started.
Yeah, and what about the process? You know, if you've ever been to a facility, the process of just getting in and out is a struggle, never mind trying to maneuver around. So can you talk about the mechanics of how film?
Well, anyone who knows me knows that I really like logistics, and I really like a challenge. And as Lynn said, we were working on our Vietnam series, and I really thought shooting in Vietnam was probably the hardest and most complicated thing I would ever do, and I was wrong. I think shooting in maximum, medium, and minimum security prisons is a really intense and serious thing, first of all. Our crews, we were very small footprint, as few people as possible would go in and out with us. We took in as little gear as we possibly could, and then we had to account for literally everything we brought in and brought out, and that was an extremely arduous process. Sounds, it's really boring, but it was really hard to do, actually. And our producers and our crews were really, they actually loved it so much that they played along, even though every time we always had to take something out that we thought we could bring in. But yeah, it was pretty good.
And for Julia and Giovanni, talk to us about being a college student, as well as working with the filmmakers in the process. Were you a little timid or tepid about the whole process when it comes to being filmed while learning behind bars?
Oh, not at all. Bard College gave me the confidence to take on many things. And more seriously, the interest of many of, the Bard cohort that I was part of was just bringing to light the special, unique thing that was happening on the inside. Many of us were inside there, engaged with this material, benefiting from it, transforming ourselves, but we knew people wouldn't believe us, basically. So when the opportunity came and Lynn brought it to my attention, I was so engaged, so enthused to be part of this project, because I knew people will finally get to see what only a few of us saw, and that is the way people engage education and transform themselves.
And just to piggyback off what Joe just said, for me personally, it was a decision I had to sit there and say, do I want more supervision? I'm already in prison, I already have people watching me all the time. Do I want increased supervision, not just from a camera, but from the officers who are now charged with watching them and watching us? I've always just did my time of laying low, staying out of trouble, and that's how I tried to do it. So it was a decision of whether I wanted that increased attention. And for me, it didn't want it, but it was worth it because of what this film could potentially do. And I wholeheartedly believe in the message that this film is giving, not just as someone who's benefited from the program and this education, but from someone who knows other people who have and can just believe so much wholeheartedly in the fact that access to this sort of education is transformational for all people, anywhere.
Can both of you talk about your thesis project or your capstone project that you completed just before graduation?
So my senior project was engaging, excuse me, the guest worker program in Germany, and It's way of both making Germans understand that they are a multicultural society, as well as re-triggering these ideas of Germanness. You know, I chose to research from 1954 to the end of the Berlin Wall, when the Berlin Wall fell. So these were like the critical times of the program, and you saw Germany in different identities, whether it was Turkish, Japanese, Vietnamese, people into Germany, excuse me, take on a language and just do some phenomenal things in Germany. But nonetheless, it still was a pretty, distinctive society, and there's still a lot. But I think there's a way in which we can look at them as an instructive example of how to engage our past.
And for me, I majored in literature, and like my project looked at dissecting or sort of just speaking on the relationship between like poetry and painting, in particular, early 19th and early 20th century, like abstract expressionism, and like the poetry of like Frank O'Hara and that whole era. However, my senior project took a bit of a different trajectory from Jules. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that, not give too much
You have to
away.
watch the movie.
No spoilers.
You have to watch the movie, yeah.
Right. So, Max, talk to us about the genesis of the program and just sort of how it's grown since its founding. And then after that, I'd love for us to talk just some about the policy implications of this program, and then having successful graduates from it, and how that changes the conversation.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. That's why we got 5 minutes.
First of all, I want to say we love the Brennan Center, and it's great to be here with so many colleagues and friends, and BARD alumni, and BPI alumni, and family of BPI students, and everybody. So this is terrific, and thanks to everyone who made it happen. I'm in the business of fundraising, so you're supposed to have an elevator pitch. It's a little embarrassing. Our work happens at the confluence of 2 crises in American life. One is now called mass incarceration. The term didn't exist at the time of when we got started in the work. And the other is the crisis of how we think about and do education in the United States. And it's hard to be pithy in talking about how that all comes together, except we know that, in the old days, when I was a child, we used to talk about the safety net as being positive things that protected people, right? Mental health, education, healthcare, etc. And over the course, obviously, of the 1980s and 90s, all that stuff was stripped away. And what replaced it was mass incarceration. And obviously, there's no one in this room that needs to be told that the worst impacts of mass incarceration were highly targeted upon certain people, and certain communities, and certain neighborhoods, and certain geographies, etc. But in addition to that, it's a result of a generation-long cynicism about young people and about the future, and a divestment in things precisely like higher education. So to talk about policy for a second, in 1988, we spent twice as much in New York State on our public universities and colleges than we did on our prison systems. And 10 years later, in 1998, we spent the opposite, twice as much on our prisons than on our college and universities, and that figure does not include about $300 million on prison construction. Right? So for me, as an undergraduate, as a young person who came from here in New York City and started the program, I think not only I recognized, but once we got started, we saw that everyone of our generation could tell implicitly that this was a story that was central to our experience as Americans, this generation's story as Americans. And something should be done about it. And there was something that our college could do that would have real national impact.
So let's go forward from there, and I would love to hear sort of the range of policy issues here. I mean, there are ban-the-box initiatives that are supposed to facilitate employment after release. There are one of the things at the Brennan Center that we're working on currently is restoring, getting Congress to restore Pell Grants for those who are incarcerated. What are you hoping the film accomplishes in sort of shedding a light on the people it's helping, but also informing policy conversations so that we can get something different from our government?
Yeah, I think the film engages the way in which people on the inside are hungry for this type of program. People who want to be able to spend their time constructively so that when they're released, they can contribute to their families, to their communities, to society. And I think we see this in the film. We see people who are definitely reconciling not only their past selves, but trying to push themselves to be new persons. I was in prison when college was stripped. People were engaged in all types of negative activity. They say idleness is the devil's playground. But, when programs like BARD came into the program, the amount of people who wanted to get in was amazing. And the people who got in, and once they got in and was able to engage this material, the transformation is phenomenal. And it's still occurring to this day. So I think more on a policy level, we need to recognize the role of education in our nation, not just for prisoners, not just for our people who are citizens, because education allows us to engage ourselves in a way that we can contribute to the world. So if we want this person, they say 95% of the people who are incarcerated will eventually be released. If we want people to come home and be productive citizens, this is sound criminal justice reform policy.
Second everything he just said. And I think just to add to that, for me, personally, my experience with this education, and the experience of other people that I've known and spoken to about it, this education that we've received at BPI, it's so empowering, right? For me, in particular, it helped me sort of place myself within this larger landscape of just society, economics, race, history, and I got, having that positionality empowered me to sort of move forward in a way where I could see where I was going because I knew where I came from, right? I was able to just sort of contextualize a lot of what I've done and my life up to that point in a way that I didn't have before. I had words, I had ideas to put to things that before they were there, but I could not speak on them, I couldn't understand them. And so, in terms of he said, in terms of policy reform for criminal justice reform, I think that an investment in education, like he said, not just certain individuals who are incarcerated, but in the communities from which these individuals are coming from, right? The majority of the prisoners in New York State prisons originate from maybe 5 communities in New York City, right? My hope for this is just that it contributes to this narrative, right? And changes this narrative where we can envision our criminal justice system operating in a much different way than it does currently.
Can I just say just 3 quick things? First of all, the thing that I think we all hope that this achieves is reveals to the country, and the scale of what Sarah and Lynn and Ken bring to the table is so enormous, and the number of people that will see this is so great. But the first thing is the waste, the positive waste, not the injustice, the positive waste that happens to terrific people that are incarcerated in the United States, number 1. Number 2 is apology changes 1 and 1 above all, and that's the restoration of Pell Grant eligibility that will restore college opportunity to prisons across the United States. It's terrifically important. It's long overdue. We have to do it. That's number 2. But lastly, and if I can be mean for a second, I think, the problem with criminal justice reform in our community, and I've spent my whole life in it, and it's, we have this funny feeling now of being wildly successful, which was the opposite of what we were used to for so long. We're really good at taking things down, and we're getting really good at making a lot of things less bad. We have very little experience at making things better. And that's what I think we need to think about when we see this, is we are going to be successful with destroying mass incarceration. That's terrific and it needs to happen. But what happens next is a much more challenging question.
Yeah, I think generally in the United States, we think of a college education as the credential, the thing you get to walk out of the university with to help you get a job. But we don't think enough about the transformation that happens when you get to learn, and how it matures you, how it changes your outlook, your worldview. And so I would love to hear from both Lynn and Sarah, one, on how you were able to gain the trust of the folks there to sort of chronicle their journey, and then from the two graduates on how, as you watch yourself on the screen, how, does that person feel familiar, or does it has the growth from the education been so substantial that it feels more distant than it is?
Well, I was just going to say, to amplify what you were just saying about sort of the idea of earning a degree, or just getting a piece of paper, the credential. One of my favorite moments in the film is a conversation that some of the guys are having, where Sebastian, who I think you've seen on screen, he says, before I just wanted to get that diploma, and now I want to earn it, as if the journey is its own reward, and the joy of learning is what it's all about, which is certainly what I wanted my children to feel when they went to college, and what I think I had a little bit of once in a while. That's extraordinarily powerful as a feeling, and it kind of permeates the program and the culture that is around the students, and it comes across, I think, really beautifully in the stories that they share with us. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time getting to know these gentlemen and a number of their colleagues and a number of women, as you saw, mostly by hanging out without our cameras, just spending time together and just trying to explain who we were, what we're up to. At the very beginning, a number of the students sort of come up to us in the hall and saying, "What are you guys really doing? What's the movie really going to be about? What are you trying to say? What's your argument?" They've been trained very in academic rigor. What is the argument you're making? And we would say, well, we're not really making an argument. We're just here to find out what it's like and what's going on, and we're hoping to tell the story. And I think we really just tried to just be very real, be ourselves, as much as we know how to be from all the other films we've made and the work we've done.
I tell you, Lynn, I never forget the time when you and Eliza,
My daughter.
her daughter, came in, and I had one of the most fabulous conversations I would have. Eliza and I were talking about democracy and economics and social structures. And
my daughter was a college student at the time, which is why she was so interested. Yeah.
And now that I think about it, I didn't even recognize that as something that made me very supportive of what you were doing with this film. I just, say, wow, these are cool people, and they're dealing with the same educational framework that I am. I have somebody to talk to about this stuff, So I definitely saw that as one of the ways in which that trust was built.
One of the things that we've been talking about recently is, one of the central aspects to what Lynn and I have done together over the years is find people to interview and spend time with them and interview them for many different films. And the process of getting to know the students was extraordinary and unusual and different for us in many ways. One of them was that we actually couldn't communicate with the students, just pick up the phone and call or drive over and see them. So we would show up, and they figured out after the first semester, oh, if I've got a call out on a certain day, they're probably coming, and there might be a camera, but they didn't know exactly what. So we did really try to spend a lot of time with the students, just with us getting to know us as much as we were getting to know them, but also because we were making a somewhat longitudinal film and we didn't actually know what was going to happen, just the journey of discovery, both for us as filmmakers and for them as subjects, was extremely collaborative. And I think we're very grateful to that. And then as we were making the film, we sort of left the school building and we would shoot in the visiting centers or in their cells with them. And that's a very personal, private, small space, and we really very generously allowing us to show spaces that nobody in their lives gets to see, and that was an enormous responsibility and a real privilege.
I think for me, and again, I always like to give my perspective because everyone's experience has been different. But for me, I think they don't get enough credit. They're really good at what they do. most like vaguest person. You would ask me something, I would give you the vaguest answer. Like, but they've won my trust. They made me feel comfortable. They came in there and they genuinely engaged me as a person, not as a subject, not as a prisoner, not as a student, as an individual. And that really helped to just make me comfortable with them and make me comfortable speaking to them in front of a camera. And there's something to be said about that, about just like, approaching someone as a person and just having them feel that you recognize that they're a person and respect that personhood.
And that goes for the college program as well.
Yes.
I remember in the orientation I was in, Daniel Karpowitz, who's one of the co-founders, basically came in the room and told us, from this point on, you should look at yourself as students in an institution. And I thought, this guy's crazy. I've been in jail 11 years. I've survived by recognizing that I'm a prisoner. I survived from recognizing that. I was able to navigate spaces through that. But Daniel Karpowitz pushed me, and the bar program pushed me to reimagine myself. And that was so helpful because I don't think people start, the phrase, the catchphrase is reentry starts on the inside. But how many opportunities is given to people to start reentry on the inside? My reentry started on the inside through taking these classes and being pushed to reimagine myself as a student and not just as a prisoner.
Yeah, and this is a perfect segue, I think, into sort of what we want the takeaways to be from the film. The reimagining, policy change doesn't begin when you show a bunch of cool slides with statistics and data and then offer a very technocratic policy answer to solve those data issues. It begins with stories, by getting people to understand that there are real lives and stories behind the numbers. And if you want to change policy, you connect with the people and not with the data. And this story, this film, gives us a story, gives you a story that can manufacture, facilitate change, systemic change, hopefully, in our criminal justice system. I would love to hear, when on November 26th, when the film credits roll, what do you want the nation to take away from the film, from your personal stories or from the film at large?
That's big. I wanted to take away. Well, I just feel like this project is something that anyone who has any view, any political orientation, once they view the film, they will investigate what college is for in this country. I want to flag something too. I want to bring something up. I have friends who've never been to prison and are so disgusted with their college experience. They tell me, Jewel, I went to, people told me if I just went to school and did the right thing, my life would be better. Now I'm saddled with all this college debt. Who deserves college in America? What is college for? How does that make this country a better country? That's what I want people to walk away and investigate, because I think that's a continuous discussion and learning process.
In addition to what Jules just said and what we were talking about earlier, which Pell is the holy grail in the field. But what we haven't talked about at all, which has nothing to do with college, is another extraordinary shortcoming in our criminal justice reform community, is an addiction to some of the easy arguments and easy conversations. There's some work that's been done and some progress that's been made in the last year or two, and some people deserve credit. But this film, as a document, will go more to share the stories of people who have been convicted of violent crime, have no pretense of being innocent in a technical sense, and have extraordinary things to offer. And that's a conversation that's challenging and sometimes devastating, and has a level of nuance that we don't know, even among reformers, that we're capable of. But that's something that this film has to offer that otherwise doesn't exist in the entire conversation.
Other thoughts or takeaways from the film?
I think we've kind of covered the key points, really. Yeah, I mean, first of all, we just want to get people to watch. So everyone here, we're asking your help to tell your friends and to, use things we found when we were starting the project, someone, what are you working on? We're working on a film about prison education, and granted this was 6-7 years ago, but still, it's kind of hard to explain. The film has such power because of the stories that are on screen that the camera captures. So to spread the word about the film, so people will actually watch it and have, we think, in a way, the transformation of understanding and appreciation for what is possible. You have to watch the movie first. And then we think a lot of really interesting conversations will happen as a result, hopefully for a long, long time.
Very good. Okay, so just to wrap up, so what we'll do is we're going to watch a 7-minute clip that sort of tidies up parts of the story here, and then we'll do audience Q&A for a few minutes before we call it a night. What I would like to do is ask Julie and Giovanni to tell us what you're up to now, and then ask Sarah if she would point out some of the other graduates in the audience.
Well, I currently work for the Ford Foundation as a program associate in its Gender, Racial, and Ethnic Justice Unit, where I perform data analysis and strategic development.
I'm currently a case manager for the Client Services Department at the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund, the largest nonprofit bail fund in the country. And what I do is, I love what I do. I help people who we bail out get the services that they need, right? We try to address the root causes of whatever may have led them to come into contact with the criminal justice system, so that hopefully it doesn't happen again.
I have the lucky task. One of our senior producers, Salima Alamin, is here. Feinstein is somewhere here. She's at Bard College on campus and a Dell graduate. Behind her, there's Diamond Tatro, who you saw on screen. With this Shantae Montgomery, who you're about to see again. So, you'll really get to know in episode 3.
All right, my question is primarily, I guess, for Jewel, Giovanni, and Max. It's actually, I'm going to put it all in 3 questions and you can answer it however you want. 1, what are the opportunities or barriers for getting into the program? How is the interaction with the other prisoners within the system as a result of it? Antagonistic, supportive, etc. And are there does BARD provide certain transitional assistance when coming out of the system? So.
Okay, that sounds better. Well, BPI has a strong effect on any facility it's in. It's really about leadership and the ways in which people look to us to kind of help them to, take on their tasks, whether it's law work, right in their family, understanding a news event that had occurred that is really complex. So we have a definite positive impact on the facility, and that's just not related to prisoners. That relates to officers as well. Officers are so supportive. Of course, like anything, there are people who are for and against things, but officers appreciate the fact that people have time to worry about their papers and their tests and nothing else. So just to sum up the impact on the facility, usually BPI students are the heads of organizations or some way involved in other organizations in the facility that provide recreational and cultural activities as well.
Okay, and I'm doing ranch, right? I'm going to stick with ranch. Okay, so short answer to your question is yes, BPI does have a system of, that supports its alumni upon release. I've benefited from it. Like, I got my first job, my first real job in life, because I went to prison when I was 16, working with an internship at the J.M. Kaplan Fund, right? A grant fund. I almost forgot what it was. The J.M. Kaplan Fund, and I worked basically as like a data analyst. I helped them digitize their entire archives, talking about 70 years of like grant records. It took me 8 months, but I was home maybe a month. You know, I was making decent money in a great office space in Chelsea, and it was an amazing experience. And it's something I would have never imagined for myself upon release. So they do a really great job at establishing these relationships with these foundations, organizations. A lot of times they're internships, fellowships, sometimes just straight out jobs. And they are really open to hiring alumni because, I mean, we're capable of anything, honestly.
And there's also a great BPI alumni network.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. You know, we must also recognize, one, BARD is great. They have reentry, if we can call it that, services that assist us. But we have an alumni network that is so informal. So whereas I remember one time I was coming home and I had to get my ID. And I actually called the BPI administrator. And he asked me, what are you calling me for? And I thought, you're so right. I was going to get my ID. I didn't know where to go. So I called one of the people I knew from BPI who was home and said, hey, Rel, tell me how I could get here. He said, hey, this is where you go, you do this, you do this, you do that. So we have that informal network where we call upon ourselves in many instances as well.
With respect to admission, so first of all, admission is competitive, and there are always many more people who want to enroll than there is money, physical space, whatever. But in terms of the process that we do, you know, we have an allergy to rewarding people for waiting in line. You know, everything else that happens in the prison is about destroying time, and that's not something that we want to indulge. And also, we have purposefully, you know, like Giovanni was saying, in a different context, want to have the most individualized, the most personalized process possible. What that means is it's the most subjective process possible. And so if you're an expert in college admission, or any kind of educational admission, you know that the standard, the party line of the experts is that the more subjective a process is, the more biased it's likely to be. And that may be true, and there are lots of reasons why, you know, we have to worry about it less, but also we come from a completely different perspective, which is a real skepticism about the value of any so-called objective metric that is used to measure the capacity or intelligence or ambition of anyone. So while we want to be forthright about the shortcomings of anything that's truly subjective, we have no faith in the opposite.
But you do an interview and have admission once a year in the prison, and we do explore that a little bit in the first episode of the film.
Hi, first point, thank you all for being here, for showing up, and for giving us the opportunity to engage. Because I think one of the things that is lost when watching films like this, especially on your couch, is you don't get to engage, right? That will lead to a point later, so hold on to that. Second point, to Giovanni, to you in particular, no question, but wanted to say that from another South Bronx side to the South Bronx side. I grew up 10 minutes from Southern Boulevard. I'm proud to know of you, and I am inspired by you. So thank you for being here and for doing what you're doing, and know that you're an inspiration to the South Bronx and all of us everywhere. So my third, no, it's super important, and I can go for days on it, but in the interest of time, we'll move to my third point, which is related to the first, right? Matt, you mentioned this point about we're really good at making things less bad, but not getting better, right? So my question is to my lovely ladies here who put this project together. The topics that you guys are discussing are not new, right? For decades, we have seen many films, projects, docuseries, et cetera, in the canon of prisons, right? What was your methodology and thought process, even though you wanted to be objective as possible, and not making a less bad film, but a better one?
I mean, really, to be honest, it was an enormous amount of humility because we've never made a film like this before. So all the films we've made, and you know, to differing degrees, like for our series on the Vietnam War, we wanted to find out from people who lived through it what it was like for them in America and Vietnam, and that felt like a huge mountain to climb. But we had a narrator, story that we knew how it began and how it ended, more or less, and we were trying to sort of interpret it. Here, we didn't know what would happen. We didn't know anything. We laughingly were going to call the production company Seat of the Pants Productions, because we just didn't know really. We had intuitively a sense of where we thought it might go, but we really didn't know. And we just, part of it was choosing really talented people to work with, our incredible cinematographers, our editor, our producers, and they helped. It was very, very collaborative between all of us to kind of figure it out as we went along, at every step.
And I think the only thing I would say to echo what Lynn said is, for me personally, and I think ultimately for everyone on the project, both making the film and for the students, in a sea of really dreary, depressing films about all the things facing our country, this is actually a hopeful story, and there is something active that you can do to make a situation better. So it isn't just about making things less bad, this actually makes things better, and we are really lucky to have had the opportunity to tell that story and to make a film about a very troubling and hard series of subjects and questions, and show a hopeful way to find our way out of it.
And the only other thing we decided to talk about is that it wasn't just us as filmmakers and our team, but it was extremely collaborative with the students and their families. So a lot of what happened are things that we captured had to do with the students, or in Julie's case, the graduates, suggesting, I think this might be an interesting thing for you to film, or here's something coming up, or what do you think about this? And it was very much an open, constant dialogue between all of us to kind of figure out, okay, what kind of experiences would be worth capturing. We had limited time and we had limited resources, so where are we going to point the camera? When are we going to be there? What's going to be happening? It was really wonderful that way. I've never done anything like that.
And to understand as the politics were a living, breathing thing that was changing over the course of making the film. As Lynn said, when we started, we were like, you want to make a film about higher education in prison? Okay, here's $1. By the time we were done, Obama was reintroducing Pell, and the whole country had a huge sea change. And so that was just happened in real time. And also, I think Bard and the staff at BPI were helping us understand education in a totally different way.
Oh, I'm on. First off, I'm a Bard alum, so big ups to you guys for taking care of business. I gotta say, watching the film, there was like maybe 4 or 5 times I was on the verge of tears watching you guys doing what you're doing. And part of that was because I have my own personal experience having been a black student at a predominantly white institution like Bard, but also my brother is incarcerated. He's currently incarcerated, and he spent some time in the BPI program. So there's a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing, and a lot of your experiences I can relate to even indirectly. But to my question, obviously you guys have had like a lot of privilege coming out of prison, having the resources and the support of BPI, and so much of your time spent in prison is looking forward to what's next, getting out, things like that. I'm curious, you guys both are doing like super meaningful work right now, and I'm curious, like, what's your, like, if you had a 5 to 10 year vision or plan from today in terms of where you ultimately see yourself or where you want to be, or what does that look like exactly?
Well, I just want to, with all due respect, where I'm here, you can see what the result is, and getting here wasn't a privilege. When I was released, I intentionally brought up the fact that I was incarcerated to describe my work ability. I wanted to inject that in the conversation, and the interview went left. So this is the result of many challenges and struggles. It wasn't just, oh, here you are, you're a Bard student, let's go. It was, wait a minute, you was incarcerated? Wait a minute, you was incarcerated? Wait a minute, you were incarcerated? So I had to take myself and pick myself up many times to get where I'm at now. And even now, there's I don't want to get in trouble, but the tendency to tokenize, and I have to wait a minute, I'm here for a reason, So I just, I understand where you're coming from. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I didn't mean it in that way.
But nonetheless, 5 to 10 years, I just want to be free, raising a family. I don't have big ambitions. I spent a lot of time in prison. I'm currently engaged in the issues that I'm passionate about. I want to see these issues in 5 to 10 years. Okay, I do think I know what I'm going to say. I want to see people take these issues more seriously. I think there is a tendency in this country to say that, oh, we support gender freedom, gender rights. We are an immigrant nation, but we have forces that are like really finding new ways to oppress immigrants, women, people of color. So I want to see people take these issues more seriously and get mobilized. But personally, I just want to live and be with my family.
Yeah, I have to echo him on a personal level. I really just want to be happy, living my life, maybe having a family, and continue to do work that's meaningful to me, whatever that is in 5 to 10 years. On a larger scale, in 5 to 10 years, I hope to be living in a society that we're past having these conversations about what is prison for, and we figured it out, right? And we figured it out in a way that's better than what we have now, and not just less worse, like Max said. That's just that for me is 5 to 10 years. I'd hope to live in that society.
Right. I feel like this question has to be asked given the focus of most of the video as well as the people on stage right now. Is there a difference at all in the implementation, the rigor, or the outcomes in the men's or women's programs? Because I didn't see the advanced classes on the women's side in the video as I did on the men's, so I was wondering if they are the same.
Sure. So the curriculum is identical. The programs are not. When we, for example, if I can single you out, Jewel, Jewel, I think, first enrolled in BPI in 2003, 2004. So that was a 10 or 12-year relationship prior to release. At the Prison for Women that we're at Taconic, we are thrilled if we have people enrolled for 4 semesters and getting them through the associate's degree. So the curriculum is identical. The experience and the relationships are different in that they're shorter inside and much more weighted to what happens after release.
And there is a lot more about the women's experience than some of the other episodes that we didn't show. Answer my question, but what happens if you graduate with a BA and then you have
So I always said
number
that.
of years on
so there are
yours
women who've left prison and come to and studied on finished their BAs on the Bard campus, for example. That's happened with men and women. Gaiwan, who's here, finished his senior project after finishing. So we have ways of finishing degrees post-release with Bard at the BA level on campus, or we have a tuition-free college within the Brooklyn Public Library that you all should know about, called the Bard Micro College. But also we are insinuated within CUNY and have an office that helps place people within the CUNY system, but also BPI alumni finished graduate degrees at Columbia, NYU, Yale. Somebody's just starting a PhD in comparative literature, who's in the film at Cornell. So people go on to do all kinds of things.
But also inside the prison.
What happens if you finish the program and you're still incarcerated?
Jewel has that.
Yeah, so I actually had the privilege, and that was a privilege, of tutoring other students. There is a training program for writing and math, and in particular because I had taken German in a full course, I was a German tutor as well for students who started the new cycle. So we are still engaged in many instances with the program as tutors and teachers and stuff like that.
Even still students, because a lot of graduates continue to take classes.
And take
They
classes.
continue to take classes, they just continue to take classes if they haven't graduated, right? It's something about that engagement with the work that you just can't stop.
Just a couple more questions, so one here and here, and then we'll...
So my question, I guess, is addressed to Max. I'm wondering, is there something in the program where you address trauma? Because I'm so conscious of the trauma that a lot of these students are coming out of, which really can affect your ability to learn.
Yeah, that's a terrific question, and I have to admit, for 15 years, the answer was a defiant no. And I'll tell you, I'll explain that. That's not to be provocative. It's that as we were building the program, we also resisted all kinds of advice from experts, strategic planners, what have you. All the input we got from others was that we should become something other than a liberal arts college. So everyone projected their version of what these people need onto us. And sometimes it had to do with mental health, sometimes it had to do with addiction, sometimes it had to do with God, sometimes it had to do with what happened, right? And so we were militantly focused on one thing and one thing alone. In more recent years, I would say two things have happened. A lot has come from students themselves. We have a specialization in, curricular specialization in public health, and so that's something we continue post-release and have a whole number of alum working at senior levels in the City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. But also, more recently, a real focus on, I think, what you were talking about, which are things that people have experienced that can only really be addressed in a different kind of way. And to be entirely forthcoming, I would say two things. We have a lot to learn, and also I think our students recognize that there's something that needs to be addressed, but there's also quite a lot of stigma in the process of addressing it. So I think there's a challenge, there's lots of challenges that we face there.
Thank you.
To the graduates, now that you've been through this formative experience and you've seen the value of education, do you have thoughts on how you reach youth in at-risk communities? Is it access to education? Is it seeing what the future could hold? Is it mentorship? I mean, how would you go back into these communities that you came from now and try to reach people before they're incarcerated?
You listen to them. Simply, you listen to them. We do not listen to the youth enough. We don't take them serious enough. I've been calling for many foundations to have a relation between youth and the boards of these foundations, because I've tutored, so BARD has a tutoring program out. Is it still in the Brownsville Community Justice Center? When I first was out, I did some tutoring there, and just from the fact that I was from that community and I listened, did so much for the students. I listened to them. Don't get me wrong, I got them. I found ways to, impart knowledge to them, but until I listened to them, I would not be able to get through to them. And I was able to get through to a few and had some long-term relationships with them because I listened.
Okay, we'll do our last question, and then I'd like Lynn to sort of wrap us up with how the audience can make sure as many people as possible see this film.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was very moved in many ways. I'm a producer, and I'm also working on a project about recently incarcerated men in Bloomington, Indiana, and their struggle to, transition back into society. And one of the things that they tell me, both the men and the women, is, they interview for jobs, and they just can't get any jobs because they have prison records. So, and then of course they have many other struggles too, and it's a new population for me to work with. I really appreciated, by the way, the filmmakers talking about the importance of developing the relationships and just getting to know people. But my question is, I wondered, what happens when they do get out and they go into the workforce and they have prison, that's prison records. And one last thing, I do want to say that, but I do also appreciate the fact that you talked about the importance of learning for learning's sake. And that comes out in the film very powerfully. So I don't mean it's just about getting a job, but there is that piece.
Well, I'll take this one. I don't like, speaking too much, but we have been instrumental in a number of training programs, particularly with the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation has a program through which, BARD students are allowed to work there for a year to get the experience that's necessary to integrate into the workforce. But there's two things with this that I would love to talk about. One is helping bright people integrate in society, and while they have the ideas, they may not know how to use a printer. That was my case. Two, how does society have to meet us somewhere? How does society have to be integrated to us? So in one of my first jobs, when I wasn't able to use a printer, my boss sat me down and asked me, Jewel, what's wrong? You're brilliant. What happened? I explained to her that I had a problem with the printer. I didn't know there was too many buttons. I didn't know which one to press. And she basically had an employee take the additional task of being the go-to person whenever I had a problem with technology. So this is a way in which the company itself didn't just say, Jewel, you know, you're nice, but you can't use a printer, you're fired. The company met me, you know, to allow me to feel comfortable. And I think that's the part of reintegration that we don't talk enough about. How does society have to move to meet a lot of people that will be released?
And I think just to add to Joe's point, we live in New York City. The diverse density of just opportunities and people here makes it a lot easier for individuals coming home from here to just have someone who may give them a shot, who may be open to hiring them. I'm assuming in Indiana it's not.
From the Bronx, but I've lived in Indiana for 2 years, so you're right. You know, they come out, they don't have cars, and they need cars to get to.
Yeah.
You know, just I think about that. Yeah, New York, you got to train.
Yeah, and I acknowledge and I recognize that like the situation's a lot different. You know, it would be a lot different for them over there. And I think considering that, all I can say is just that whatever opportunities individuals are able to get, to just always keep in mind that you have to just like establish yourself and create inroads for other people behind you, right? You have to set the example, be the example. If it's like, hey, give me a shot. This is how it's working out. You're able to change minds that way, I feel, in some ways, right? For now, he's open to give someone else a shot, or you just like have a different perspective. Later on, if it's someone else, give someone else a shot. Yes.
Lynn's up for how we're going to make sure everybody sees the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have it's hashtag Cause Behind Bars PBS right there, and we're going to be, on social media and trying to promote the film through the ordinary ways you would. And I think we're really interested in how to spread the word because social media is such an interesting place for these questions right now. And we were very encouraged when the BPI debating team beat Harvard in 2015. Sarah was there with our camera crew, and that's part of the story, but that became a huge viral story. So that showed us, we're in the middle of making the film, but it showed us there's, we think, enormous interest in this story. So we just have to try to reach as many people as we can. Viewing parties, share on Facebook, all those kind of things to let people know that it's happening. And if you have any thoughts for us about how we should do that, organizations we should be connecting with, that kind of thing, please let us know. That's.
People don't realize that you can stream PBS for free. So that's another way you can watch it if you don't have a TV. You can stream it both the day and date of broadcast, and then for 60 days after that, it will be streaming free.